All right, guys, welcome back to the Liquid Loans channel. I'm your host, Crypto with Paul. We are joined by Cristian Ajoa, the channel favorite. Thanks for joining and taking the time today, Cristian. I know you were super busy. We actually just caught you after the 2025 edition of the Australian Crypto Convention in Sydney. So that's the 10th country you've been in and represented Liquid Loans and PulseChain at. So thanks for that. But my first question, just based off of that, is how does it feel to finally get a breather?
I'm looking forward to Christmas. It's fun. I need a bit of a break. But having said that, it's I personally find being on stage energizing. Like I really enjoy it. To be honest, to be perfectly honest, I enjoy that much more than what we're doing right now, right? So it's but to me it's all part and parcel of what we need to do. And as a team, as you know, Paul, we've been doing everything we can to keep promoting not just Liquid Loans but PulseChain. And so whilst it's been physically exhausting, I mean, the presentation side of things is fairly straightforward, but the travel wears you down a bit because you're in and out of planes, you know, and if you've ever traveled internationally, just the whole process of going through immigration, all of that, it just wears you down. But having said that, that's exactly what we need to do. Right? So we're just getting on with it.
So you said you like doing the presentations more than you like doing this. And my understanding is that you were on stage 3 separate times on that Saturday. Is that right?
Yeah. So there were 2 separate panels before the main presentation. And, you know, I actually said to one of our team, Jack, I said, he was with me at the time, I was a bit concerned because the main presentation was towards the end of the day. And typically, if you've ever been to any of these conferences, people get worn out and they tend to exit, you know, mid-afternoon. They're pretty much packing up and heading home. But I was really surprised that we had pretty much a full audience. Actually, we did have a full audience for the presentation. And I actually think a lot of that had to do with the 2 panels that I was on. One particular, the first panel was all about lending platforms. And, you know, I was the odd man out because there was a number of people there promoting what I consider to be TradFi 2.0, which is all the centralized lending stuff. And I got a few eye rolls from for the other presenters when I actually mentioned, did anyone remember Celsius? And does anyone know the whereabouts of Alex Mashinsky? and they got a few eye rolls. But the reality is people got it. They thought, okay, all of crypto is a risk. Looking at this type of stuff, it is a risk, right? So, but my honest opinion is we will coexist with the CeFi stuff. We'll coexist with those centralized solutions. And people will opt for those in some cases. Our only concern is they need to understand that they are taking a risk by participating in something where they're effectively just handing over custody of their assets to somebody else. And so long as they understand the risk they're taking, then everyone has free choice, right? But that was one panel. The second panel was about stable coins and the plethora of activity around that at the moment. And there was a geopolitical angle to it that I couldn't help myself, so I was diving into that. And I do recall at the end of the presentation where we were talking very much about Liquid Loans and PulseChain, one guy came up to me at the end of the presentation and said, "Oh, I really liked what you said at all of the 3 presentations." So I think the fact that I was on the panels, it kind of meant that, hey, people were looking for Liquid Loans and what we were doing. So it meant that they stuck around till late in the afternoon to listen to the main presentation. So I think it worked out well in the end.
So you mentioned the first panel was about lending, and then the second one was about stablecoins. And then that last keynote that you gave at the end of the day, what was that topic on?
That was purely about Liquid Loans. And well, it wasn't specifically Liquid Loans, but it was more about, hey, don't sell your underlying assets. The assets that you truly believe in, you never sell them. You leverage and you borrow against them, but you do so in a conservative way. So, you know, if people treat it like it should be, it's not a slot machine. It's actually something that you can build long-term wealth with. It's actually a very good way of managing your affairs. But one thing I did mention that caught the attention of a lot of people, and that is, as you know, nothing in crypto is risk-free, right? There's risks everywhere. So whether that's about maintaining your own seed phrase or, you know, if you have a Trezor, making sure that that's nice and protected. So all of those things need to be managed. And the more that we look at, and I think in principle, we all love the idea of self-sovereignty. We want to maintain our own stuff, right? So we want to manage that. But that represents a risk in itself. And the risk is, I honestly believe there is no such thing as set and forget. When you strive for self-sovereignty, it comes with a personal responsibility to manage your affairs and manage your affairs effectively. And if you're the type of person that is a bit gung-ho and don't really care too much about those sort of things, then I think you're likely to fail, because that risk in itself is a risk that you need to self-manage. And that still is a risk that, while self-sovereignty, everyone strives for that, they need to understand that that comes with personal risk.
So you mentioned the concept of never selling the underlying asset. Why is this a message that you're so passionate about?
I think because I've been caught out. So when I've started in crypto, just like most of us, we all tend to come into crypto with the whole get rich quick mentality, right? We all want that 100x, 1000x, and we want it quickly. And unfortunately, that is not the right mindset to come into crypto with, but the reality is, I'd argue that the majority of people coming into crypto think in those terms straight off the bat. And the challenge for that for me is that's the wrong mindset. And I personally have fallen foul of chasing multiples, looking at increasing wealth, and acted more like a trader than an investor. And so all I'm doing is just sharing my experience and hoping that people get or learn from my mistakes and don't repeat those mistakes. And I think never selling, and here's the other thing, never selling doesn't apply to every crypto, right? It doesn't. There's a hell of a lot of stuff out there that, hey, if you want to speculate and you want to trade and you want to do all those things, again, everyone has free choice. But if you do, just be aware of the risk that you're taking by doing so, and don't use all of your personal assets to chase those massive returns. But on the flip side, if you truly are wanting to build long-term wealth, what you need to do is look at assets that you truly believe in and just acquire those over time. And the reason we say never selling is twofold. One is, if you truly believe in an asset and that it'll continue to appreciate over time, despite the volatility, then why would you ever want to sell it? It's something that you need to keep acquiring, and do so using, the old dollar cost averaging, which is kind of boring, but it's a very good way of accumulating wealth. And protocols like liquid loans help you to extract value when you need to without selling. And so for me, the benefit of that is you've not lost the underlying asset. You've just got a little bit out of the system to enable you to facilitate something else. And the one example that I give at a lot of these presentations that the penny drops for people, and that is, I usually start with, if you wanted to buy a brand new car, so you're looking to buy a new car, would you sell your house to buy the car? Well, the majority of people would say no. Why would you ever want to do that? So typically what most people do is they may take a small mortgage against the property to acquire the asset that they're looking for, in this case, a car. Crypto's no different. The only difference, I think, is crypto in general is very volatile. So you need to manage your position if you're going to use this strategy. But if you take a very conservative position, it's not a bad way forward. So this is a very long-winded answer to the question. But for me, sharing this, and why am I so passionate about never selling, is because I know that this philosophy has been around for years. It's not like something brand new. People have been using this for hundreds of years, and it's the safest way of actually accumulating wealth, and also to do so in a very safe way. So for me, it's just imparting some knowledge that I've gained, and hopefully people learn from my mistakes when they're looking at crypto in general.
So when you were sharing this message with the audience while giving that keynote, how did the audience receive it? Our colleague that was with you said it was almost like being with a celebrity. You had mentioned that people came up to you after the speech on the stage. So how was that? How did the audience resonate with it?
Yeah, look, I think whilst it's a scripted presentation, because it needs to be, right? So you take people through that journey. I'm more comfortable the more of my own personality and my personal experience comes through. So I'm able to share a lot more of my experience. And I think the community's response, and I don't want to sound like praising myself, but I think I'm very good at explaining difficult concepts in a very simple way. And I think so long as people understand that, so the worst thing you can do is start talking about staking and people think, what the hell is staking? So you talk to them in simple language that they may understand and they get it. And so most of the people in the audience, what I did notice, and this was certainly it happened in Dubai and Dave mentioned it to me as well, people were taking their cameras out and just taking photos of the slide presentation. So they wanted to make sure that they had all the content and the context that I was providing in that material. And it was a lot of head nodding. I think at one point somebody started applauding, which was kind of funny for me at least. But it was, look, as I said, I get energized by that because if I can connect with someone that may be just first learning about crypto or wanting to get in, it's nice. You're able to help someone in a meaningful way.
I bet you met a lot of PulseChain community members in person during this event. So what was that like, being able to run into the people who firsthand use, some of these protocols, liquid loans, et cetera? How cool is that?
So I had a number of people approach me, really grateful, very supportive, understanding of the situation that we find ourselves in. And so for me, it was really nice to get that. And it wasn't just one person. I think all up, there was probably 6 or 7 people turned up on the day. One fella that we met previously at the last time we were at that conference. But there was a whole bunch of new people. And I remember one guy racing towards me. And I was thinking I was going to have to practice my roundhouse kick. But he came up and said, "Oh, CC, can I get a photo?" And blah, blah, blah. And which was just, it's really nice to get that sort of recognition from the community. Because unfortunately, as you know, Paul, we do tend to cop a fair amount of slack on Twitter and X. And, it's can be a little bit deflating at times. So there was a bit of apprehension, if I'm honest. But it was soon overcome by the amount of positive feedback that we're getting at the conference itself.
So I'm curious then, you went to this conference, but you've also been to a ton of others, like we said. What was your favorite moment about this one specifically?
It was the grumbling of the CeFi guys when I called out Celsius and Alex Mashinsky and basically said, hey, I said to the audience, I said, listen, don't forget that there are a lot of protocols that are being launched that are truly CeFi, that are masquerading as DeFi, right? So be aware, manage your risk. And if you do decide to go down that path, just be fully aware of the risks you're taking on. But to me, that was the most important moment because I could see a hell of a lot of people in the audience head nodding, thinking, yep, he's right. We've got to be mindful of the risks that we take if we go down that path.
So you spoke at the AusCryptoCon, not only, this past time, but 2 other times this year. And Liquid Loans was actually also a silver sponsor for this event.
That's right.
Now, my question is, what led to that decision?
Oh, look, obviously with Dave, the co-founder, we sort of had a chat around where would be, because none of these things are, there's an expense and an allocation, not just in time and travel, but you're effectively providing a sponsorship of sorts to the event. So there is an investment that's being made, and we're having to be quite deliberate about where we're wanting to do that. And so Australia was an important event for us to present at, and likewise Dubai. I think we've been at Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan. There's been a host of them. And for me, it's the decisions that we're making are, we need to raise the profile, not just of Liquid Loans, but of PulseChain. And I think the only way of doing that effectively is you need to talk about what you're doing to audiences that may not have heard about you. And I actually think the Asian market is a very buoyant and growing market. And to be honest, at a lot of the presentations that we've given there, people don't know much about PulseChain at all. And I think it's important. We're doing what we can to garner some people to think about PulseChain. So the last thing we want to see is all this negativity and negative comments on social media about PulseChain. Like, we need to turn the corner. Okay, guys, we know that we've had a rough time of it. Turn the corner. Think about all of the benefits that the chain provides to us and promote the projects that have been working really hard to add value to the chain. And I'm not just talking about liquid loans, I'm talking about a whole host of others. And support the influencers that have a positive outlook rather than this negative Nelly stuff that we tend to get a lot of. So for me, if we're serious about PulseChain exploding, we cannot rely on Richard just because Richard's going to come back, hopefully comes back and starts streaming. Everyone's going to be happy to see that, including myself. But we can't wait for that. And we need to do everything we can to remain positive. And effectively, we're selling the benefits of the chain. That's what we should be doing. Forget about Richard. Forget about all of his past and all the issues that he's had to deal with. Promote the chain. Promote the chain, why we're there in the first place. And what are the benefits of using a chain compared with, say, something like Ethereum?
Now, so one of the last questions I'll ask you here then, Cristian, now kind of getting back to the whole centralization argument that you had mentioned, what is one thing you think the audience might not have realized about the risk of centralization and these TradFi companies coming in and basically taking over?
Yeah, I think most people don't realize that a lot of these TradFi folks, really, the banks are nervous about crypto because they're seeing that there's a real opportunity for people to borrow against assets like Bitcoin, for example, Ethereum, PulseChain, obviously. And what the banks are concerned about is these protocols coming in and effectively taking a slice of their market. And so what they're doing is that they're supporting CeFi type protocols to come in. And I think to answer your question around, well, what are the audience? How's the audience response? I think most people kind of get now all of a sudden they get the whole notion of, hey, I don't have to sell. That's right? It's a big positive. Don't have to sell. But then they now have to make a decision between, okay, if I don't have to sell, am I comfortable handing over my assets to a third party so that I can extract value? And if I'm comfortable doing that, then I think, again, free choice, people will gravitate to that. But I think in the presentations that I gave, and certainly in the panels, it was unequivocal. People understood that, hey, what Cristian's talking about is self-sovereignty. And that's why he's involved in cryptos, because he wants to, it's his asset. He doesn't want to hand that over. And the other example that I give, which is kind of relevant for a lot of the audience, is it's like having gold. I would rather have gold in my hand than a piece of paper telling me that I have gold somewhere else. So if you're true to yourself and you think, how can I protect my asset? I'd rather have my gold in my vault than a piece of paper telling me that I have gold somewhere else. And that to me that was the eye opener for people. They're thinking, yeah, he's right. I'm trusting that somebody else is going to do the right thing. And whilst we can trust individuals, and the Alex Mashinsky example is a good one for me because I really liked Alex. I liked what he presented, and I thought, hey, I trust this guy. He seems to know what he's doing. And whilst I was fortunate, I wasn't involved in anything significant with Celsius, but it just showed me at least that, hey, even people that you think have got a good infrastructure in place, something happens, and then all of a sudden you're carrying a massive risk. And people don't necessarily appreciate that risk until they have to, right? And it's only until they're hurt by something like Celsius that they realize, oh my goodness, I've been carrying this massive risk for too long.
Now, look, I know we're out of time here, Cristian. So let's just make one last deal real quick. Promise me in December you will come back on the channel. We'll do a ranking. Maybe we'll review all the 10 countries you'll been to. Yeah. And then we'll lock in your predictions for 2026. How does that sound?
Happy to do that, Paul. Thank you so much for all your support and help. Thanks, Paul.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having on the channel, Cristian. And guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.